What's going on, Banshee friends? I wanted to make a cool video today showing the differences between a OEM Yamaha Banshee case and an aftermarket billet case. And this billet case is made by Keith at mattonmachine.com. He's kind of a hard guy to get a hold of, but he does some killer work on these cases. And I wanted to actually show you what he actually does, because there doesn't seem to be much information on his website or on the internet just even talking about his cases. So I figured this will be the great opportunity to show everybody what they are, how they look, what you can do with them, and what differences you might find between this and an OEM case. So let's get right into it. So as I said, this is a billet case. So this means it was a solid block of aluminum which has been turned down to make its final shape. And Yamaha originally from the factory had casted their cases, so they took a pattern and they poured liquid aluminum inside of it. And when it pops out of the sand, that's what you get. So these cases were not as shiny when I bought them. They were more like this material, this milled face material. But then I had the friendly people over at Cascade Racing polish them up for me. And it was extremely expensive, so I don't recommend doing it, but it looks cool. So besides the polishing part of the equation, the first kind of like big differences right off the bat, which I would consider features, is that you have a window down here for your shift forks. So on some of your high horsepower bikes, you have a tendency to bend the shift forks between shifting and gears under high loads. So this shift window here, shift fork window, allows you to pop this cover off and access your shift forks and remove them and replace them without having to pull the whole engine apart and split the cases. So that's a cool feature. I'll probably never use that, and in my opinion, probably will be more of a pain in the ass, another potential leak point. But if it doesn't leak, great, but I doubt I'm going to ever bend my shift forks. And then other differences are just going to come in basically in the tool path in the machine world. You don't really care about certain features, and certain features may be casted into this case from Yamaha for whatever reason. Maybe it was from a different model, like the street bike they made, the RD350, or maybe it was just to help the pattern release from the sand after it's casted. So, and then obviously the same thing goes with machine cases. When a tool bit's coming in here and doing some of these pockets, it's a little bit difficult to do some of the features which Yamaha casted in here. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to have these features, and so Keith, he just simplified the case. But the cool part is Keith did such a great job that if you were to take the bottom or the top and flip-flop them from OEM to billet, they pretty much line straight up. You could actually probably run a top and a lower that are different manufacturers from OEM to Keith's, at least Keith's design, which I thought was pretty sweet actually, but I'll actually demonstrate that later in the video. But on the bottom of the cases, besides the cooling fins right here that get basically machined out, he added some lightning pockets in there so that way it's not so heavy. Try to keep on the weight savings things. Now, Keith's cases, the billet ones, do weigh more than OEM cases. I can't tell you how much, but I can tell you that it's a not that big of a deal situation. He added in material in the key spots where you would want it, and then he removed it in places where you don't want it. For example, this particular little window he cut in here serves absolutely no purpose, and it is just a flat piece over here, and it's just for lightening up the cases because there's no practical use for that part. And then other than that, somebody had recommended me that when I go to install a motor, as you can see over here by the neutral switch cover, there's two grub screws that go in here, and those are to hold your shift fork rods in place. But they had warned me and suggested that I put a little bit of the engine case sealer on the threads here to prevent oil from seeping through the threads and leaking all over your cases. So whoever told me that, that's probably really good advice. I'm going to take it. And then on the bottom of the cases over here, that's not a whole lot to talk about. It's just an OEM case. I'm sure you got one at home. These are actually brand new, so there's probably some missing parts from it. If you notice that little nub right there, whatever the hell that used to do, and there's a nub right here, same thing. Whatever it used to do, it's no longer there. So cool. And then I believe on the top, so again, some eliminated features. I believe on the street bike cases, this was a tachometer that could read your RPM on your transmission side of things. But that was only for the RD350, the street bike. And then obviously Keith, why the hell would you need that? You took it out, added material elsewhere in the case. I've never really understood the purpose of these cavities down here. On most situations, I see these cavities just getting filled in or just left alone. It actually doesn't really, at least on a Cub cylinder, I don't remember them having a coolant passage at the bottom, so I'm not really sure why Yamaha and everybody else puts these little pockets here. Kind of useless. But again, maybe it's something to do with manufacturing. But Keith comes up, you know what I mean? He makes his deck nice and clean, all one piece. You don't have to worry about any pockets or cavities. And that's really the number one feature I like about his cases, which there are other manufacturers now making cases that do the same thing. But he made his deck completely flat. He added a bunch of meat on the sides here that if you look on the Yamaha, there's meat there, but for conversation, this is bored for a 73 millimeter bore, and that's a stock bore. So when you go and bore these skirts open here for your cylinders to fit in, and then you start opening up your transfers to match your cylinders, it becomes razor thin, and there's not enough meat on the bones. And when you look at these cases, you can't even tell. I mean, these match perfectly to the cylinders, and there's plenty of gasket sealing faces on the other cases I had. Because of how much it needed to open up that transfer, it just maybe got like a little razor thin edge there. And it ran, but let's be realistic, that's not right. You're just doing what you can. So the cases are incredibly a lot more expensive. I said they're completely terrible, but than the OEM cases. But now OEM cases are creeping up there in price, so it really doesn't change a whole lot about which one you're going to go with. And then the other options, such as driveline cases, I think Vito's has a set of cases. And then CP Industries, the same people that make the Cheetah Cub and all the cat cylinders, they have a set of cases that obviously are only for sale to people who are dealers of CP stuff. They're not for sale to the public yet, but I'm sure they also made some of these corrections in the deck to make it more legitimate. Besides that, Keith has gone ahead and added the center hole for if you want to go with a DM setup versus a Cheetah or Cheetah Cub. You would just remove these two studs and you would add a M10 stud right there, and that would basically allow you to run a DM cylinder without the little conversion piece, which is pretty darn cool. But I'm actually not running a DM, I'm running a Cheetah, not a Cheetah Cub, a Cheetah. So it will have like 250R reeds and power valves, and it's a cool motor. We'll do a video about that some other time, but yeah, so this is a pretty cool looking part. I am doing some fun stuff with titanium on this build. These are all titanium bolts. I'm not going to tell you the manufacturer of them because you can figure that out. I'm not a paid sponsor. But if you are curious to what it would look like if we were to mismatch a case half, you can go ahead and try that out real quick. Let's try to do it without scratching anything though. Give me 1 second here. I actually sort of lied. There is a dowel pin on that side of the case. Oop, come on, it focuses. On right there, that dowel pin, the one right there. Yep, preventing the cases from going together. If I yanked the pin, it would sit flush, but alright, check this out. Like I was saying earlier, he added meat where you need it, so this is pretty, not thin, but thinner, and then on his ceiling face, he went more like a 3/8 versus, I don't know, like a 5/16. Pretty neat stuff, but for the most part, everything could potentially line up. Would I recommend doing it? No, absolutely not. It's probably a fucking terrible idea to try something stupid like that, but if you wanted to, try it on yours and send the video to me. Yeah, see, even cut the little keyways into the bearing spots for the transmission. It's pretty slick. I also want to try to get you guys a little bit of a view of the other side of the case, the underside. Give me a second while I finagle this. Pretty sweet stuff. And that's for reference. There's the OEM inside. And here's the Matton machine inside. And I feel like we have no choice but now to do the same thing to the top so you guys can see the difference. Because after all, what would the point of the video be? We're not doing anything else other than showing off, right? Alrighty. So, Matton machine, you can see pockets right there. Basically right there. Obviously the casting's cleaned up because you don't need these ribbing supports. This cavity right here has been eliminated. What else do I see? Something interesting, but the oiling holes have been increased. There's 4 here, and there's only 2 here. That third hole does nothing. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little bit of the same thing on these ones. These oil galleries are actually opened up and actually work. That's kind of interesting. But spacing on here is probably the same spacing, but a little bit different alignment. Different. That pocket right there obviously is not in this one. Actually, all these pockets right here are basically been eliminated. So really, this is where the majority of the business is happening in the motor. So probably keeping the weight in the front of the motor where it's actually getting hammered on probably makes a little bit of sense. What else do I see? That's basically it. I mean, the Yamaha cases are pretty standard stuff. We've all seen them before, but I hardly ever do you see a video actually showing the difference between, I don't know, a manufacturer's version versus an aftermarket version. You'd think it'd be a pretty simple video to make, but whatever. I hope you guys enjoyed this awkward video.